I bought an abandoned cabin in the woods for cheap, but the first night I stayed there, someone knocked from underneath the floorboards. I should probably start by saying I did not buy the cabin, because I wanted some peaceful new life in the woods. It wasn't one of those romantic ideas where a city guy burns out, sells everything, and moves into the forest to find himself. Nothing that noble. I bought it because it was absurdly cheap, and I had finally gotten desperate enough to stop caring why. My name is Eric, and about 8 months before I bought that place, my life had fallen apart in the boring, humiliating kind of way nobody ever writes songs about. My apartment lease ended, my job at a shipping warehouse got cut, my savings disappeared faster than I wanted to admit, and I was left bouncing between short-term work and a couch I was slowly starting to overstay on. One night I was doom scrolling real estate listings I couldn't afford, half as a joke and half because I wanted something to look forward to, and I found the cabin. It was listed under vacant rural property, which already sounded suspiciously polite. The pictures were grainy and poorly lit. One showed the outside from a distance, a small wooden cabin tucked under heavy trees with a sloping roof and a porch that looked like it had survived several winters too many. Another showed the interior, one room, old stove, wooden floor, a single window over the sink. No neighbors visible, no power problems mentioned, no explanation for why the price was lower than a used car. I assumed there had to be some catch, so I called the number. The woman who answered sounded tired, like she'd already explained the place too many times, and was tired of pretending it was normal. "Why is it so cheap?" I asked her. There was a pause. Then she said, "Because nobody has lived there for a while." That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. I probably should have hung up then, but I didn't. She gave me the location. I drove out there 2 days later, and by the time I saw the cabin in person, I was already too deep in the process to back out gracefully. It sat at the edge of a tree line so dense it made the whole property feel cut off from the world. Not scenic, not cozy, just isolated. The road up to it was barely more than dirt and packed gravel. The porch boards were weathered grey. One of the front windows had a crack running through it like a spiderweb. The place looked empty in the way abandoned places do when they've been left too long and aren't quite ready to admit it. The weird thing was that it didn't look destroyed. That's what convinced me, honestly. No graffiti, no smashed doors, no obvious rot, just neglect, as if someone had walked out and never come back. The woman from the listing met me there with a folder of paperwork and a key that looked older than the house itself. She was maybe in her 60s, short, clipped grey hair, practical boots, no nonsense. She didn't bother giving me a tour, just handed me the forms and said if I wanted it, I needed to sign right then because she had other matters to attend to. I asked if there was anything I should know about the property. She gave me a look that felt oddly direct. "About the cabin," she said. "Yes. Stay upstairs if you can." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, "the floor has a habit of settling." I remember laughing awkwardly, because I thought she was making a joke. She was. She didn't smile, didn't clarify, just waited while I skimmed the contract. The whole time I kept thinking this was probably going to end with me regretting the purchase for normal reasons, like termites or plumbing, or an impossible drive in winter. I had no idea I was about to regret it for a completely different reason. I signed. The sale closed faster than I expected, which somehow made it feel more legitimate and more suspicious at the same time. I moved in a week later with a mattress, a box of dishes, a folding table, some clothes, and the kind of optimism people only have when they're too tired to be picky. The cabin had no internet worth mentioning, no real cell signal, and a generator that coughed every time it started. There was a small kitchen, a living area with a fireplace, one bathroom, and a narrow staircase leading upstairs to a single bedroom. The upstairs room was the nicest part of the place, actually, bigger than the rest of the cabin by proportion, with 2 windows and a view into thick forest that went dark surprisingly early. The downstairs, though, felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. Not haunted, not yet, just uncomfortable. The floorboards creaked in a pattern that didn't match my weight. The hall toward the back of the cabin was slightly too narrow, and the air near the kitchen always seemed a little colder than the rest of the room. I spent the first day cleaning, unpacking, and trying not to think about how alone I was. The first evening I lit the stove, ate ramen out of a bowl with a chipped rim, and sat on the floor listening to the silence outside. No traffic, no neighbors, no distant barking dogs, just woods and wind and the faint occasional knock of branches against the walls. I actually started feeling better. Not happy, but better. By the time it got dark, I'd convinced myself that I'd somehow pulled off a decent life hack. Cheap house, remote location, quiet environment, no landlord breathing down my neck. Maybe I really had found a reset button. Then I heard the first knock. It came from below me. Not under the porch, not from the side of the cabin. Under the floorboards. I froze with the bowl still in my hand. 3 knocks. Clear as day. Knock, knock, knock. I set the bowl down so fast I nearly spilled it. The sound had come from somewhere under the kitchen floor, close enough that I could feel it more than hear it, like the wood itself had been tapped from beneath. At first I thought it might be a pipe issue. Old house, settling, rodents maybe, rural cabin, weird acoustics, impossible little noises that become enormous once you're alone. So I stood up, walked a few steps, and listened. Nothing. Then, just as I was starting to convince myself I'd imagined it, it came again. Knock, knock, knock. This time louder. I backed up instinctively and looked down at the floor. The boards near the stove were old and uneven, with narrow gaps between them. The knock had definitely come from somewhere below, not inside a wall, not from a cabinet, beneath the cabin. I told myself to calm down. Old structures make strange noises. Then the knocking changed. It moved, slowly, deliberately, from the kitchen toward the hall. Knock. Pause. Knock. Pause. Knock. I went cold so fast I actually felt dizzy. Because whatever was below the floor had started knocking like it was following me. I stopped moving, the cabin stopped making noise, even the stove clicked down into silence. Then from under the hallway boards, just beyond the kitchen, came a voice. Not loud, not clear, but unmistakably human. Mister. I didn't breathe. Every instinct in my body went from confused to terrified in a single second. The voice came again, quieter this time, like someone speaking through wood and dirt and a lot of distance. Mister, are you home? I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe 5 seconds, maybe 30, it felt much longer. Then the upstairs floor creaked above me. I jerked my head up so fast, I nearly pulled a muscle. The bedroom. Someone had stepped lightly across the floor above me. I knew I had not gone upstairs since I'd arrived. The cabin was still. The voice below the floor had stopped. The movement above me had also stopped. I remember one very stupid thought flashing through my head. Maybe the previous owner had forgotten something and somehow still had access. That thought lasted less than a second, because the next sound made it impossible. A slow scratch from underneath the floorboards. Not from one place. Several. As if fingers were moving through dirt. Then directly beneath my feet, something tapped upward once. Hard. The lights flickered. And for just a split second, I could swear I saw a pale shape move under the kitchen floor. Not a person, not fully, just enough to make my stomach turn over. I grabbed my phone, back toward the front door, and almost tripped over the edge of the rug. The second my hand hit the doorknob, the knocking started again. This time from under the exact spot where I was standing. 3 heavy knocks. Then one more. And a voice right below the floorboards, close enough to make my blood freeze, whispered. Don't go upstairs. The voice under the floor said, don't go upstairs, and I did the exact thing my body wanted least. I looked at the stairs. They were old, narrow, and steep, with a thin railing that looked like it had been added later. The bedroom door at the top was closed. I was sure I had left it open when I unpacked, but now it was shut. Not only shut, aligned perfectly, as if someone had gently pulled it all the way in and latched it after I came downstairs. My hands were shaking so hard, I could barely hold the phone. Hello, I said, and immediately hated how weak it sounded. No answer. The cabin was dead silent again. The silence was so total that I started hearing my own pulse in my ears. I took one slow step backward toward the door and kept my eyes on the stairs the whole time, expecting something to move at the top. Nothing did. Then the kitchen floorboard beneath me creaked. Not from my weight. From underneath. I nearly stumbled through the front door trying to get it open, but the deadbolt had stuck. Of course it had. The knob turned halfway and jammed. I yanked it again harder, and the metal rattled loud enough to feel like a mistake. Behind me from the hallway came a soft thump. I whipped around. The bedroom door was now open a few inches. I had not heard it move. I could see darkness inside the room, and the angle was wrong, somehow too dark even for a room with no lights on. It looked less like a bedroom and more like a gap in the cabin's shape, like the room had been cut out of the house, and something empty sat where it should have been. Then came the voice again, but this time from upstairs. Eric. It was my own voice. I swear to you, I nearly blacked out. It wasn't a close imitation. It was my voice exactly, same pitch, same roughness, same little upward inflection at the end of my name. It sounded like someone calling from another room in my house, except the room was above my head and I knew I was alone. I stared at the stairs so hard my eyes hurt. The voice repeated, softer now. "Eric, don't come up." My skin went cold everywhere at once. That was the thing that broke me. Not the knocking, not the voice under the floor, not even the bedroom door opening itself. It was hearing my own voice tell me not to do what I was already terrified to do. I ran for the kitchen instead of the front door. Not because that made sense. It didn't, but the front door felt too exposed, and the kitchen had a back window over the sink that faced the side yard. I figured if I could get it open, I could at least get out and then figure out how to explain to myself what was happening. I was halfway there when I heard it again. 3 knocks. This time from the cabinet beneath the sink. I stopped dead. The cabinet door was slightly open. I had not opened it. Slowly, with every nerve in my body screaming at me not to, I reached for the handle and pulled it open. The space under the sink was empty except for old pipes, a flashlight I didn't recognize, and a small black notebook. My stomach dropped. I did not touch the notebook right away. I just stared at it because the flashlight looked old and dusty and the notebook looked new. Too new, clean edges, crisp corners, like it had been placed there recently. Then, from above me, the bedroom floor groaned. Not a creak, a full weighted groan, like someone had stepped onto the bedroom floor and shifted their weight slowly. I snatched up the flashlight and the notebook and backed away from the cabinet. The notebook had no title on the cover, just a strip of masking tape with one word written in block letters. Downstairs. I opened it with one hand. The first page contained a list of dates. That was it at first, dates, followed by short notes in cramped handwriting. 3:14, heard voice in kitchen. 3:16, something under the boards, at 11:20. 3:19, bedroom door open again. 3:21, do not answer if it uses my voice. 3:24, it learns the layout faster when I sleep downstairs. My mouth went dry so fast it felt like I'd swallowed sand. The notes were all in the same handwriting. Daniel's handwriting. No, not Daniel. I should say the previous owner, whoever he was, because the name on the inside cover was Daniel. It was M-red, written in the same careful hand, and next to it were several more notes, each one more impossible than the last. If it speaks from under the floor, it is closer than it sounds. If it says your name, do not answer. If the upstairs voice sounds like you, it is only trying on the shape. I nearly dropped the notebook. At that exact moment, the lights went out. Every bulb in the cabin died at once, plunging the whole place into dark so complete it felt physical. I shouted without meaning to and fumbled for the flashlight, but before I could switch it on, I heard something move inside the bedroom upstairs. Not one thing. Several. Slow shifting sounds, the drag of fabric, a soft scrape against wood. Then the stairs groaned. 1 step. 2. I backed into the kitchen counter so hard pain shot through my hip. The flashlight turned on in my hand with a weak yellow beam, and when I aimed it toward the stairs, I saw nothing but the empty hallway and the open bedroom door at the top. But something was there. I knew it, I just couldn't see it clearly. Then the front window rattled. I jumped, swung the flashlight toward it, and saw my own reflection in the glass, pale and wide-eyed and half-crazed looking. And behind me, in the reflection only, something stood at the bottom of the stairs. I turned. Nothing. Turned back to the window. Still there. Tall shape, slightly hunched, too thin to be a normal person, its head tilted toward me in the reflection like it was listening to my breathing. I did the dumbest thing I could possibly have done. I spoke. "Who are you?" The shape in the glass opened its mouth, but the answer did not come from the reflection. It came from under the floor. "It's been a long time," the voice said. Then the shape in the window smiled with my own face. I dropped the flashlight. It hit the floor, rolled under the table, and the beam swung wildly across the cabin as I lunged for it. In the spinning light, I saw the notebook lying open on the counter, and the last line on the page I'd been reading had changed. The words were fresh, dark, and wet-looking, as if they had only just been written. "He opened the cabin for you." Something hit the floorboards below me, so hard the whole kitchen jumped. The voice under the wood laughed. I grabbed the notebook and ran for the front door again, not caring if it was locked, not caring if I had to break a window to get out. The deadbolt suddenly gave way under my hand like it had never been jammed at all. I threw the door open and stumbled out onto the porch into freezing air so sharp it burned. The woods were black on all sides. No moon, no road lights, just the dark line of trees and the cabin behind me. I didn't make it 2 steps before I heard the voice from upstairs shout through the open bedroom window. "Eric, come back inside." It was my voice again. Clearer this time, angrier. I turned and looked up at the cabin. The bedroom light was on now. There was a shadow in the window. And it was waving at me. Not in a friendly way, not in a come here way either. More like it was telling me it had seen me leave and was waiting for me to make the next mistake. I stood there on the porch, cold enough that my teeth started chattering, and I heard the front door behind me slowly close on its own. Then, from inside the cabin, the knocking started again. This time it was coming from every direction at once. The knocking spread through the cabin, like it was traveling through the bones of the place. From the floor, from the walls, from somewhere above me in the dark roof space, it was still the same pattern, 3 knocks at a time, but now it was everywhere at once, a dozen soft impacts answering each other like a signal being repeated across the house. I stood frozen on the porch, staring at the front door. The cabin looked normal from the outside, which somehow made it worse. Small porch, dark windows, weathered boards, one light on upstairs that should not have been on. If someone drove past right now, they'd just see a lonely old cabin in the woods and a guy staring at it like a fool. Then the upstairs window opened. Not all the way, just enough for the cold air to spill out. I took 1 step back. The shadow in the bedroom window leaned closer to the glass. I could not make out its features clearly, but I could see the outline of a head, shoulders, and an arm resting on the sill as if it had been standing there for a long time waiting for me to look up. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I fumbled it out with numb fingers and saw one new text message. "Unknown number. You should not have brought the book outside." I stared at the screen. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I looked down at the notebook in my hand, then back at the cabin, and for a second I had the awful, irrational feeling that the thing inside had just become interested in me in a whole new way. The message changed before I could answer. Another text. "It can hear you better when you're not in the house." I almost dropped the phone. The porch light flickered once, though I had not even realized it was on. Then the front door behind me creaked open a few inches, like the cabin was quietly inviting me back in. I turned, expecting to see something standing there in the doorway. There was nothing. Just the dark interior, the faint glow from the kitchen clock, and the low empty hallway leading to the stairs. Then I heard the voice from below the floorboards again. Only now it sounded farther away. Not less dangerous, just more certain. "Eric," it said. I didn't answer. "You can leave if you want." I stared at the dark doorway. "Then let me," I whispered. A pause. Then the voice said very softly, "You already did." That made no sense until I looked down at the notebook again. The page I had been reading was no longer the same. The handwriting had shifted, the notes were gone. In their place was a simple floor plan sketched across the page, crude and uneven but unmistakably the cabin, kitchen, hallway, stairs, bedroom, and underneath the floor of the cabin there was a second shape drawn in black ink. A room. No, not a room, a space. Beneath everything. I turned the page. There were more notes. "Do not sleep on the first floor. Do not answer if it uses your voice outside the house. If you have the book, it will follow the ink." My hands went cold. Then, below that, in fresher writing than the rest, a final line appeared as if it had been written while I was standing there reading it. "It has already seen you leave." I looked up so fast my neck hurt. The woods were still black and quiet. But now, just beyond the porch steps, I could see footprints in the dirt. Fresh ones. Bare. Too many to count. They started at the edge of the cabin and spread outward into the trees, as if someone had been walking circles around the place for a long time. I stared at them, confused at first, then deeply uneasy, because the tracks were not random. They formed a path. A trail leading away from the cabin and into the dark woods. Away from the road. Away from help. I don't know why I followed it. Maybe because I was too scared to go back inside, and too stubborn to stand still on the porch all night waiting for something to come out. Maybe because I wanted to see where the trail ended and convince myself that whatever was happening had a simple explanation. Maybe because the notebook had already turned my fear into curiosity, and I hated myself for that. So I stepped off the porch and into the woods. The trail was easy to follow at first. The ground was soft from rain in places, hard-packed in others, but the footprints were distinct enough that I could keep them in the weak light from my phone. The cabin stayed visible behind me for about 30 seconds, then disappeared into the trees. The farther I walked, the quieter everything got. No insects, no branches moving, no wind. Just my own footsteps and the sound of my breathing. After a few minutes, the path bent toward a clearing I had not seen from the cabin. I knew the woods were dense, but this looked different somehow, like a scar in the tree line. There was a low dip in the earth at the center of the clearing, a place where the ground had sunk slightly, as if something beneath it had shifted long ago. The footprints ended there. I stood at the edge of the clearing, shining my phone light around, and saw something that made my stomach drop. A trap door. Not old-looking in the usual rustic way. Deliberately built, heavy, wooden, half buried in dirt and leaves, with a rusted iron ring set into the center. I approached it slowly. The surface of the door was marked with the same kind of black writing that had appeared in the notebook, though most of it was faded and hard to make out. Names, maybe, dates, a sentence or two scratched into the wood deep enough to catch in the light. One line was still visible. He went down to listen. I stared at that for a long moment. Then I heard it. A knock from beneath the trapdoor. 3 slow taps. I nearly stumbled backward. The door itself shook faintly. Not violently, just enough to show there was something below that knew exactly where I was standing. Then another sound came from behind me in the trees. A footstep. I spun around, heart slamming against my ribs, but the clearing was empty. Another step. Closer. I shone my light around wildly and caught only tree trunks and dark branches. Then the voice came from the darkness behind me. My voice. Don't open it. I turned back to the trapdoor, so fast I almost fell to one knee. The handle on the door was moving. Not opening, turning. As if someone beneath it were trying to unlatch it from the other side. The notebook slipped from my hands and hit the dirt. I looked down for half a second, and when I looked back up, there was someone standing on the far side of the clearing. A human shape. Still watching. I couldn't see the face clearly, only the outline of a man in a dark coat. The same coat I had seen in the cabin window. The same shape I had seen in the reflection. The figure lifted one hand and pointed at the trapdoor. Then it said, in a voice that sounded exactly like mine, "You found the part he hid." I stood there in the clearing staring at the man-shaped shadow, the trapdoor still trembling under my feet, and every part of me knew I was one bad move away from making this much worse. The figure did not come closer. It didn't have to. The way it stood there in the dark felt like pressure all by itself, like the woods had grown a second silence around it. Then it raised one hand and pointed again at the trapdoor. "You need to listen to what's underneath," it said in my voice. I wanted to run. That was the honest answer. Run back to the cabin, run to the road, run until I found another human being and could pretend any of this had an explanation. But my legs refused to move, and the thing under the trapdoor knocked again, 3 slow taps that seemed to travel straight up through my bones. I crouched and grabbed the iron ring. The moment my fingers touched it, the trapdoor went still. No more knocking, no more shaking. Just complete silence. That was somehow worse. I looked toward the dark shape in the clearing. It was still there, but now I could no longer make out a face at all. Just a human outline, half hidden by the trees, waiting for me to decide. I pulled. The lid resisted at first with a wet, grinding sound, like wood scraping against packed earth. Then it lifted enough for a cold breath of air to rise from below. Not rotten, not moldy, just old, stale air that had been trapped for years. I shined my phone light down into the opening. At first I saw only a narrow ladder bolted into the dirt wall and descending into darkness. Then, a few feet below the opening, I caught the glint of something reflective. Metal. I leaned closer and tried to focus. The beam revealed a small underground room, rough walls, dirt floor, and in the center of it, a wooden chair turned toward the ladder. Someone had been sitting there. There was a cup on the floor beside it, a blanket, a plate with something dried and unidentifiable on it, not abandoned, used, recent enough that the blanket still looked folded in a way that implied habit. I stared at it so long my arms started to shake. Then I saw the notebook lying open on the chair. A second notebook. Same size, same black cover. This one had a name written inside the front cover, in the same handwriting as the first. E. Carter. My stomach dropped through the floor. It's my name. I nearly fell backward out of the clearing. My entire body went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. I was holding the first notebook in one hand, looking at a second one with my own name in the room under the trapdoor, and for the first time I understood that the cabin had not been waiting for me by accident. The shadow in the trees moved. I looked up. The figure was closer now, though I still could not make out a face. It spoke again, but this time it didn't sound like my voice. It sounded older. Tired. Don't let him know you've seen the chair. I blinked. What? The figure took one step forward, stopping just outside the edge of the clearing. He needs the cabin to think it still has only one guest, it said. I stared at it, unable to process what it was saying. Who are you? The figure was quiet for a moment. Then it answered, the one he left behind. My pulse hammered so hard I felt it in my neck. I looked down at the open trapdoor again. The ladder, the chair, my name in the notebook, the stale cold breath coming out of the hole in the earth. Everything about it felt wrong in a way I couldn't name, like I had stumbled into the middle of a story that had already been running long before I arrived. The figure and the trees continued. If you go down there, do not answer if it speaks from the chair. I swallowed hard. Why? Because that's the part that knows how to pretend. The words hit like a physical blow. I looked from the trapdoor to the figure and back again. What is underneath this cabin? The answer came after a long pause. Where he kept the rest. The forest seemed to tighten around me. I don't know how to explain that better than that. It felt like the woods themselves had leaned in. The branches above the clearing hung too still. The darkness beyond the tree line felt thicker now, less like night and more like something waiting for permission. I took a shaky breath and looked down into the opening again. On the floor beside the chair, I now saw something I had missed before. Another set of footprints. Bare feet. Leading from the ladder to the chair and back again, as if someone had been climbing up and down repeatedly. My skin crawled. The notebook in my hand suddenly felt much heavier. I opened it again, flipping through the pages with shaking fingers. Maury entries, Maury dates, Maury warnings. There were sketches now too, floor plans of the cabin, the woods around it, the underground space below it, the trapdoor, the chair, a crude arrow pointing from the underground room back up to the cabin kitchen. Then I found a page dated the night before I moved in. It said, "When the new owner arrives, do not let him sleep below ground." Below that, in fresher writing, were 3 words I did not want to understand. It starts copying. I looked up at the figure again. Its face was still obscured, but now I could tell it was watching me with an intensity that felt almost desperate. "Help me understand," I said, and my own voice sounded pitiful in the open clearing. The figure was silent for a long time. Then it said, "He isn't downstairs right now." I froze. The figure went on, slower now, as if each word hurt. "He's with you." I felt the blood leave my face. My first thought was that I'd misheard. My second was that the figure was trying to scare me. My third, immediate and nauseating thought was that it meant the thing in the cabin, the voice in the walls, the one in the bedroom, the one under the floorboards. I looked toward the dark woods behind me, then back at the opening in the ground, suddenly aware of the impossible choice in front of me. The figure lifted one hand and pointed at the notebook in my grasp. "Read the last page," it said. I did not want to. I turned to the final page with fingers that barely worked. The handwriting was shakier here, tighter, like whoever had written it had been running out of time or running out of confidence. There were only 2 lines. "If you find the room below, do not bring the book back up. If you already did, check who answered first." I stared at that line. Then I heard something behind me. Not from the trap door. From the woods. A single slow step through leaves. I turned. And there, just beyond the clearing, standing in the dark between the trees, was another me. The second me stood in the trees just beyond the clearing, and for a split second, my brain refused to understand what it was seeing. It looked like me, same height, same jacket, same exhausted face, but it stood too still, like a photograph left out in the rain. Its expression was blank in a way no real person's ever is, not even when they're trying to hide fear. The figure in the clearing went rigid beside me. "Don't answer it," it said. The other me took one slow step forward. Then another. I could not move. My whole body had gone cold and heavy, like someone had filled my bones with wet sand. I looked from the copy of myself in the woods to the open trapdoor to the notebook in my hand, and every part of me felt like it was splitting apart from the inside. The thing in the trees stopped just outside the edge of the clearing. When it spoke, its voice was mine, but cleaner somehow, less strained. "You're standing in the wrong place." I actually felt my stomach lurch. The figure beside me muttered, "Don't listen to it." The other me smiled. It was a tiny, almost apologetic smile, and that made it worse. "I didn't think it would get this far," it said. I snapped, "What the hell are you?" The answer came too fast. "I'm the one who stayed upstairs." The sentence hit me like a bucket of ice water. Suddenly, every little wrong detail from the cabin started lining up in my head at once. The bedroom door open when it shouldn't have been. The voice on the floorboards telling me not to go upstairs. The shadow in the window. The second notebook with my name in it. The thing in the bedroom saying it had stayed where the opening was. I looked down at the notebook again, then back up at the copy in the woods. "No," I whispered. "No, that's not possible." The copy tilted its head. "It is if he already made room for both of us." The figure beside me made a sharp, angry sound. "Stop talking." The copy ignored it. "He brought you here because he needed someone to carry the book out." My hands tightened around the notebook. The copy's eyes flicked toward it. "You already did." Then it took one more step forward, and I realized something that made my skin crawl even worse than the rest. The ground under its feet did not make a sound. No crunch of leaves, no shift of dirt. It moved like something being projected into the woods rather than walking through them. I backed up without thinking and nearly tripped over the edge of the trapdoor. The figure beside me grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "Listen to me," it said, and now its voice was urgent, stripped of all that strange distance. "If it gets the book, it closes the loop. You have to keep moving." "Moving where?" "Anywhere but here." The copy in the woods smiled wider. "I can still hear the cabin from here," it said. "Can't you?" I hated that it was right. Because now I could. From somewhere behind me, far off but distinct enough to make my chest tighten, came a single knock from beneath the ground. Then another. Then the slow sound of something shifting under the trapdoor. The copy's attention turned toward the opening in the earth. Its expression changed. Not fear, not surprise. Recognition. "That's where the chair is," it said softly. The figure beside me swore under its breath. I looked down into the trapdoor opening, and for the first time since I had lifted it, I noticed something new. The chair below was no longer empty. Someone was sitting in it. At least I think it was someone. The beam from my phone caught the shape of shoulders, a head bowed forward, hands resting on the knees. It was too dark to see a face, but the posture was unmistakably human, and the stillness of it made my mouth go dry. The copy in the woods stopped moving. Its voice dropped into something almost reverent. "He's awake." The figure beside me whispered, "No." I looked at both of them, one in the trees and one in the clearing, and the horrible shape of the thing finally began to make some twisted sense. Not full sense, enough to scare me even more. There had been a person in the cabin before me. A person under the floor. A person upstairs. A person in the woods. And maybe they had never been separate the way I thought they were. I remembered the notebook again, the line that said, "It starts-copying." My throat felt tight. "What does it copy?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. The figure in the clearing did not respond immediately. It seemed to be listening to the trapdoor now, or maybe to the thing sitting below it. Then it said what it thinks you need most. The copy in the woods took a step back. For the first time, it looked unsettled. I turned my attention to it. "You said you stayed upstairs." It nodded once. That's what he called it when I stopped being useful. The figure beside me went very still. I looked between them, useful for what? The copy's expression flickered. For the first time, I saw something in it that looked almost like shame. He didn't bring the cabin the first time by accident, it said. He brought it because it was the only place that could hold the split. I didn't understand that immediately. Then I did, and I wish I hadn't. The cabin was not just a place, it was a mechanism, a trap, a kind of box built to keep something from becoming whole, or to keep something whole from getting out, maybe both, maybe neither. The figure in the clearing was watching me carefully now, as if it was waiting to see whether I'd connect the rest on my own. I looked down at the notebook again. The last page had changed. I swear it had changed in the seconds I'd been staring at the two figures. Fresh ink appeared across the paper, as if written by an invisible hand. The one outside is the one who left first. The one in the clearing is the one who stayed longer. Do not trust the one who sounds most like you. My breath caught in my throat. Then the copy in the woods said, very quietly, "He's inside you now." I jerked my head up. The figure beside me went pale in a way that had nothing to do with the darkness. The copy continued, not unkindly, like it was explaining something inevitable. "That's why he let you open the trapdoor. He needed a hand to bring the book out. He needed the copy to remember the shape." My stomach twisted. It felt like the whole clearing had narrowed around me. The trapdoor behind me, the copy in the woods, the figure beside me, the cabin somewhere behind the trees. Everything felt connected by invisible lines I could suddenly almost see. Then, from inside the notebook, the pages began to move. Not from the wind, there was no wind. They turned one by one with a dry paper flutter, stopping on a page I had not seen before, a page full of writing in my own handwriting. I stared at it in disbelief. There were only 2 lines. "If you can read this, he has already left the cabin. Don't let the other one back inside." I looked up slowly. The figure beside me was smiling. Not a friendly smile. Not even a cruel one. Just a very tired smile, like someone who had been waiting for me to finally understand the mistake I had made. And from somewhere behind my shoulder, much too close, I heard my own voice whisper, "Which one of us do you think is supposed to go home?"